Hey there, folks. Welcome into the News 12 Now desk. Thanks for joining us here on this New Year's Eve, December 31st. We are one day away from the new year, and we are one day away from the Sugar Bowl. Georgia taking on Ole Miss, looking to avenge last year's Sugar Bowl defeat at the hands of Notre Dame. Sports Director Alyssa Lyons down in the Big Easy this morning as they just wrapped up day 2 of the media days down there. So, Alyssa, we had that, what I find to be a really awkward press conference where it's the two coaches trying to show that respect for each other when they're about to go to battle the next day. But how were things down there at the news conference this morning?
Honestly, they were joking. They were laughing, hugging, and kind of giving each other a little bit of a, hey, man, like, we're going to be battling it out, but let's enjoy the moment. And this is pretty special because this is Pete Golding's first time as a head coach in New Orleans playing in the Sugar Bowl, which Ole Miss has played in 4 Sugar Bowls already and have won in 3 of those, I'm pretty sure. So pretty exciting for him to be back here and leading this team into the Big Easy. But, of course, Kirby Smart just, hanging around here. He's done this. It's pretty usual this time of year for him. So it's been an exciting day so far, and we've learned a lot about this Georgia team and what those 3 weeks off really meant to them. But this is the 4th time that 2 SEC teams have met in the Sugar Bowl, surprisingly, right? So this is another chance for that SEC dominance to really show. We already had one edition of that in the Oklahoma-Alabama game. So this will be an interesting setting the stage term for next season of where these 2 teams stand, but where are they going to go in the future?
I mean, we've been in rematches, big games. When you play in the SEC, every week's a big game. When you go on the road in the SEC and play, it's an environment like no other. It can't be matched. And so the gauntlet of what their team has gone through and our team has gone through, this is another, SEC battle.
And they've gone through the physical gauntlet on both sides, but Ole Miss kind of gone through the mental gauntlet as well with all this Lane Kiffin drama. And I know we're obviously talking more about the Georgia side being in Augusta, but Alyssa, we got to mention the Kiffin stuff here because Pete Golding was kind of thrust into this role sort of suddenly. We kind of had a feeling Lane Kiffin was gone, but all the drama that surrounded it with who's getting on the plane to Baton Rouge and who's not and who's coaching in this game and who's not. So did they talk about that at all when they were mentioning the Ole Miss side?
Yeah, and they even said that Egg Bowl was essentially that playoff game, which we know that was Lane Kiffin's last game as the head coach of Ole Miss. So that was the first thing that they mentioned. But then, you hear Pete say he's never intended to be a head coach. He doesn't want to be one. It was never on his card to put his name in the hat, so to speak. But it just kind of slipped into his lap. The Players Council even voted for him. So you have this sense of everyone is behind Pete Golding because he's just a likable guy. He's a defensive-minded guy like Kirby Smart. And he even mentioned that in his press conference today. He said, if anybody's done it the right way, it's Kirby Smart, stepping in from a defensive coordinator position at Alabama and then moving on to his own team. And they had a similar start as well. I mean, Pete Golding was at Alabama just in 2018, so shortly after Kirby Smart had left. So they have some overlap, but the only overlap that's there is Nick Saban, of course. So it's been interesting to see how he's taken charge of this team, and I think while Georgia does come in here and they have a bit of the chip on their shoulder from the way that the Sugar Bowl ended for them last season, this Ole Miss team is pretty hurt too. You look at the way that Lane Kiffin exited. I think a lot of players are still carrying that hurt with them, even though they're probably not talking about it on a daily basis like we're hearing all over Twitter anymore. But you also have the sense that they want to prove something because shortly after the Lane Kiffin exit, then you had them playing Tulane, and a lot of people said, oh, well, Ole Miss beat Tulane. Like, that's a nobody team. So they have something to prove here in New Orleans as well.
Yeah, and this is one thing Joe and I talked about yesterday was the rest versus rust that we see with these teams. And we saw it last year with all the teams that had byes losing in their first games with it was Georgia and Oregon and Boise State and Arizona State, I think were the 4 teams. And this is one thing that they're trying to avoid this year, obviously. And with this 26 days or whatever it is that they have off, there's a lot of game prep that goes in, obviously, and a lot of information that these guys are getting. But Kirby, try not to overload the guys too, right?
Yeah, and he even said information is good in some sense, but you gotta hold back a little bit because you gotta let your players be free. And we even saw that last year. I think that they were a little bit overloaded with Marcus Freeman, and his mindset and how he runs his team is very similar to how Kirby Smart decides the defense here. And that was a big point of mention. You have 3 weeks off. You're designated your assistant coordinators to go in and do an in-depth look at Tulane season, at Ole Miss's season, and then at the last minute you're flipping the switch to solely Ole Miss. That's a lot to deal with. So he said, we're going to give the guys some nuggets, but we're going to hold back too.
Yeah, there probably is a line of too much information, but it's more to me how you present the information. I'm all about the presentation and being teachers as coaches, and you learn from other people's mistakes. We try to do a good job of mixing things up in bowl practices and not just doing all information on our opponent. We do information on games going on in the National Football League, games going on across the bowl season. What do you see in bowl? What's the trends? How are things looking? People don't tackle well in bowls. People maybe turn the ball over because they don't get hit as much in bowls. So we don't make it just about information directly involving us or directly involving Ole Miss. We just make it a teaching and learning experience as much as we can for the guys, and don't try to overload them.
And one thing that I found so interesting here in the last day and a half that we've been listening to Kirby during these news conferences is he says they can't learn anything from last year. Like nothing they did last year is going to help them in this game, and nothing they did against Ole Miss earlier in the season is going to help them in this game. I don't know about that. I think they can learn a little bit from last year, especially when it comes to staying focused and staying in rhythm after that long layoff that we've been talking about. Did he mention that at all?
Yeah, that was one of the things he said, that maybe the college football playoff will look at possibly moving a game earlier in December so there isn't as much of a layoff. They had 3 straight weeks off, so that's a lot of time missed out on the field and getting real live team action, and that's really important for this Georgia team as they are extremely young. And you're talking about a scout offense and a scout defense that is nothing like they're going to see in that first team offense and defense, right? So it's really hard to mimic other teams in the playoff, and I'm sure even looking at Ohio State, that's another team that they could possibly face here. It's really hard to mimic wide receiver university when you don't have that depth and that knowledge yet, because these guys are still so young and they are learning. But if you look at Georgia's scorecard, they are 4-0 when they played a team twice in the same season. So all those wins, they have resulted in 3 SEC championships, 1 national championship. I think they're okay where they are, but again, that layoff, it's going to be looked at a little bit harder after this game, and I'm sure the college football playoff, if they hear Kirby Smart what he had to say today, are going to take a look at it too. Here's what he said.
In no sport anywhere do you go that long in a team sport without playing a game when you're in a rhythm of playing a game, right? They don't have March Madness and say, hey, let's sit out 30 days and then come back and play March Madness. Baseball, they don't do that. They just don't do that in sports. You play, you have a rhythm, you get going. Ours is very unique in that regard in terms of the setup for the break. And that may change in the future, I don't know. But I know I talked to several coaches in the playoffs about that exact thing. And, there were a lot of them that wanted an ability to play a game in between those two, because you're going to find out more about your team. I mean, if you're not good enough to win that game, you're certainly not going to win the next 2 or 3. So it is what it is. Everybody tries to spin it as an advantage, whichever way they take it, and nobody really knows what the advantage is, because you can lose a player, you can get somebody injured when you play those games. But we've taken a different approach to it this year. We're going to see how it goes. I don't think the outcome of the game defines the approach. I think it's simple as saying, well, it doesn't work if you don't play a game. Not necessarily true. How did you play in the game? What were the factors that contributed to winning and losing the game? And we'll see that tomorrow night.
So there you go, learning a little bit of something maybe from last year. And I will give it to Kirby too, though. Part of his point was that every team is different and every year is different, and trying to find that identity. If you're trying to find it at this point in the season, you're probably not in the Sugar Bowl. So what did Kirby talk about when it comes to the identity of this year's team?
Yeah, they're first very young, and we've been talking about and preaching about that. That depth chart is nowhere like it was on their 2 back-to-back national championship runs. And he even mentioned that they are a little bit more hungry because of that. They are not the same team as they once were. This is a group that's trying to create their own reality and own identity here at the University of Georgia. And because of that, he even brought back to those COVID years. He said, those guys, I think they got tired. They weren't as much energized as they would be to come to practice and to go play in a game. You don't see that here. They are ready to go and locked in and loaded for this game. And he talked about that.
The group last year wanted to, the senior class, you're always trying to win for that team. Each team has a different makeup, mentality. You grow and create an identity throughout the year of what that team is. And every year it's been different. I mean, our teams have changed. The 2 national championship teams that were back-to-back were very different. There's guys in the room that stand up and talk, and their first time being with our team and really experiencing things was the TCU game out in California, and now they're at the end of their ride. Nothing is given. I mean, you go completely undefeated the following year, lose 1 game, and don't make a playoff. Then the next year you make it and you get beat by a Notre Dame team. So you don't control a lot of that. You control your preparation. You control your thoughts, habits, and priorities, and we try to center our attention around that. I don't look at this team and say, oh, well, they're a failure if they don't win a national title. Championships are what we all want. Trust me, we all want to get them. But it's the ride and the affecting young people's lives along the way that we really do this for. And that means a lot to me, especially as I get older and up in age. Is what kind of relationship do I have with those guys? Will they come back to the program years from now? Are they invested in that G on that helmet? And that matters a hell of a lot more to me, that they feel like they were a part of something bigger than themselves.
All right, and there you go, Kirby, breaking down a little bit of the identity of this year's team, and as they continue to try to mold that behind Gunnar Stockton, who was kind of thrust into this game last year after Carson Beck got injured in the SEC championship. Now he's got a full year under his belt as the starting quarterback, looks much more confident and has as the year goes on. So, Alyssa, what did they say about their QB1?
Yeah, I think he had a breakout game back in October, so they're going to expect the same thing as this week. So that's going to be really interesting to see how he works this offense in particular when you have Ethan Barber and Colby Young back. And that is pretty exciting for this team. When you think about it, Colby Young left in the first quarter back on October 18th against that Ole Miss team. So to have him back, that is huge. And then Ethan Barber, we're going to see how many reps he gets from Gunnar Stockton, because you have Lawson Lucky, who's just been phenomenal to see this last few games. So we're going to see how many reps those two get, but everybody has confidence in Gunnar. I mean, this is a guy that jumped right in and was able to be successful. At times he learned a lot from that last Sugar Bowl appearance. So we're going to see a lot of growth from him, I expect, tomorrow night.
Yeah, and we talk about the identity of the defense from years past, but the days of those offensive firepower weapons are gone too. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, George Pickens, the list goes on there. So trying to find those new guys to become postseason heroes and try to lead this team to a championship. Alyssa, I got to ask too, while you're down there, what's the atmosphere of the city like? Obviously, we know the tragedy that took place last year. You were down there, covered that extensively. So in this fresh year of 2025, now going into 2026, how is New Orleans?
There was actually a lot fewer people outside last night, which I was shocked. Not necessarily shocked. I think it was people were trying to ease on in. They were just kind of, taking it all in, understanding what happened. They did put up a memorial. It's called Second Line in the Sky. It's a bunch of flags and pictures that hang crisscross down Bourbon Street to honor the 14 who have passed. And Governor Landry is even going to order flags half-mast starting the 1st, and then that'll run through the 4th. So everybody's just really honoring what happened here, but there is a hesitation to go down Bourbon Street, I think. I know I was very hesitant. I told everybody at 5 and 6 o'clock yesterday that I had this little pitch in my stomach, oh, we have to go down there just to see it and take it all in. You want to confront those kind of demons, right? You want to be here and be a part of what makes New Orleans so great. So we did that last night, took a look at it, and even got to see the new extended barrier that they had. They had it down last night, so that covers the entire plane from the sidewalk all the way across. So you're not going to have a vehicle get through there. It is pretty loaded down. And then they actually deployed the National Guard. So there was a ton of National Guardsmen out last night, probably just as many people that were out walking around. There were National Guardsmen. So it's very, you have this element of honoring, being respectful, but also understanding that you don't want terror to repeat itself. And there's a protectiveness, and I think everybody's a little hesitant as they walk and enjoy their time here in New Orleans.
Yeah, but I think it sends a clear message that this city's coming together, not going to let what happened last year define them moving forward. So I think they said 800 officers or so going to be down there tonight and tomorrow, and they'll have, like you mentioned, that barrier up too, so no cars can get down. Checking IDs if you do have a hotel reservation. So a lot of protective measures in place to make sure we don't get a repeat of last year. So that's great from the city of New Orleans and from Louisiana. So game time tomorrow, 8 o'clock, Georgia and Ole Miss. Georgia looking to advance in the college football playoff and avenge last year's defeat at the hands of Notre Dame. Sports Director Alyssa Lyons down there in the Big Easy for us. Alyssa, thanks for the coverage tonight. We will see you more of you coming up later this evening on News 12.
Sounds